First of all, we're going to hear from Anthony Purcell, who works in the Environmental Education Unit of An Taisce. But the remainder of the talks in this session are actually from Clean Coast groups all around Ireland, and we have a very special guest who's joined us from Northern Ireland as well to speak a little bit about what they're doing up there. But let's get started. So Anthony is our Programme Development Manager in An Taisce, and his background is in environmental resource management and spatial planning, and he has over 10 years' experience working in environmental education. Most recently, he's managed An Taisce's Green Schools and Green Schools travel programmes and developed an anti-litter and waste management programme for secondary schools called Neat Streets. So Anthony, we'd like to give you a warm welcome and hear your presentation called Green Schools and Neat Streets, Education and Awareness and Action, Tackling Marine Litter. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon everybody, and thank you Annabelle for that introduction. Yeah, I work with Annabelle and a lot of the team in the Environmental Education Unit of An Taisce, and during my presentation today I'd just like to give you a quick overview of a couple of the other programs we run in the Environmental Education Unit, after presenting a quick overview of the Education Unit itself and our philosophy on environmental education and how that is being implemented through our projects and campaigns. And then I'll round up by just linking the two programs I'll be speaking about with the message today more directly, the Marine Anti-Litter Agenda. So the Environmental Education Unit of An Taisce was established by our now Director, Patricia Oliver, in 1993. And since then it's focused very much on the introduction and development of various programs and campaigns promoting environmental education. I think the term sustainable development probably wasn't invented back then, but someone could probably correct me on that. Started off with one project, one program, and that was the Blue Flag program. And we're all familiar with that program today, and it has gone on to be the success it is. And you know, we're here 18 years later with various programs and campaigns operating successfully throughout the various sectors of society, from right in the home out to third level campuses. Very active and successful programs with the schools and obviously the community groups and coastal groups and organisations. So as I mentioned, we're in the business of promoting environmental education, and environmental education could be considered as spreading awareness and enhancing knowledge about the environment. But it doesn't really stop there, because obviously a lot of the times education doesn't transfer into action. So we feel environmental education shouldn't be limited to knowledge. It should be action orientated, and there should be observable and measurable results at the end of it. And that environmental education should be promoted through the individual and the collective. And it should be participation based and action orientated. And for that to be successful, it needs strong methodology behind it, which requires participants to meet certain targets and turn their knowledge and understanding into real and tangible actions that produce results that you can measure. Now, you're all here today, and a lot of you are representing various coast care groups, and some of you are indeed ocean heroes. So that's evidence of the success, for example, of the Clean Coast programme in delivering this message into the communities to reach those and to reach those targets on the ground, really. So it's all about, I suppose, you start at the top and it all filters down to that local level. So as I mentioned, the programs I'm going to focus on today are Green Schools and Neat Streets, and I'll just give you a quick overview of what, firstly, Green Schools is. It's an international environmental and education program, first and foremost. There are over 60 countries around the world implementing green schools. So schools in Ireland aren't just alone. I mean, there are over 90% of schools in Ireland implementing the programme, which is a huge achievement. The programme itself promotes whole school action and engagement with the wider community. To date, over 3,000 schools have achieved the green flag, which is that environmental quality mark. You could compare it to the blue flag for beaches, but just green flag for schools. So I'm sure you've all seen those green flags flying around the country, some schools with several flags flying outside. So they're very proud of their achievements, and rightly so. The programme has a number of sponsors and supporters and is run in partnership with local authorities throughout the country. Our Department of Environment, Community and Local Government support the programme. We also have individual team sponsors. For example, Irish Water would be our sponsor for the water team, National Parks and Wildlife Service for our biodiversity team. It's a long-term programme, so schools, once they're awarded the flag, they need to renew it every 2 years. And we add a new team to the programme every year. So just when schools think they're finished and they can relax, we say, well, here's the next team. And it's based around a 7 steps methodology, which is a systems approach. There's an example of the teams we're running at the moment. We link the global citizenship team to all of the others. The most relevant, I suppose, in relation today would be the themes of litter and waste and water. And I've used litter and waste as an example throughout this presentation. So essentially, it's quite a simple methodology on paper there, the 7 steps. There's quite a complex systems-based, I suppose, approach behind that. But ultimately, something has to be understandable. You have to be able to implement it on the ground. So schools look at this, they think, okay, I can do that. We can set up a committee. We can do a review of the issues for a particular team. That might be their audit. We can draw up an action plan. We can monitor our progress. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can link to the curriculum here and there. Should be able to get some kind of involvement from the whole school community and also inform the wider community. And then schools generally draw up a green code, which would be maybe a slogan, which would kind of summarise, catchy slogan, which would summarise their programme. And again, get the message out there to the general public that might know a lot about it. There's an example of a committee structure. So for example, it's not just within the school environment. There are opportunities for community members of community groups, whether they be Coast Care groups or Tidy Towns groups, residents associations, business representatives, to sit on some of these committees if they're invited in by the schools. And a lot of time parents are on these committees as well. An example of an environmental review, some of the things a school might do to, I suppose, identify their starting point in terms of litter and waste would be to carry out audits and checklists. I mean, these are very good for identifying the baseline, but also raising awareness as well. Awareness about where litter is occurring, when it's occurring, what types of litter is involved, what's the most prominent type of litter, and then who's responsible. In green schools, we don't just look to the students as the ones that are responsible for dropping litter. We look at it as a collective. The producer's responsible, the local authorities are responsible, parents are responsible. So it's a collective approach, and I know that's the message that's kind of come through a lot of the presentations already this morning. You know, that you're looking to work in partnership with different organisations, you know, for the benefit of the environment. An example of the action plan here. I won't go into it in some detail. I'll leave it up to your own imagination what you interpret a litter attack to be. But that's something that this school has decided to do. It's an action day. Look down at the bottom there. They will have planned to do a beach cleanup, for example, later in the year. And one of their goals then would be to raise awareness of marine litter through environmental activities, art, videos, games, chats. Schools are very creative. We learn something every time we go out to a different school. Moving on then, in terms of the monitoring and evaluation element to it, you can see, for example, follow-up surveys. Again, it's getting recognition, it's measuring where you're at. It's not just starting something and going off on a tangent and not measuring it. This step gives schools an opportunity to review that. And then step 6, informing and involving the wider school and community is a very big part of it. And you can see, for example, in relation to the marine environment, how that can relate. Okay, an example of some of the achievements and results of green schools. I don't know how well you can see that there at the back. But for example, in relation to waste, we've calculated there last year that about 46% of waste has to landfill has been reduced by schools implementing the programme over the last academic year. That translates into about 5,100 tonnes, or the equivalent of about 2,260 hippopotamus and 6 hamsters. Okay, so you get a flavour of this. You know, you need to bring it down to levels that, you know, that your audience can understand it and relate to it as well. For example, in terms of water, 384 million litres of drinking water conserved. And this is all by the schools. This isn't something we're taking credit for. This is the schools. This is the action on the ground. You know, we have 2 schools here today representing our Neat Streets and our Green Schools programmes, as well as Coast Care. We've Pelfor National School and we've St Killian's. So these are the guys that are achieving these great results. So that's enough water, for example, to supply County Kilkenny for 4 weeks. Okay, if anyone knows how much water that looks like. Overall savings then estimated for schools. You know, you need to appeal to all audience, whether it be boards of management, school principals that are maybe looking at the cost savings. 8 million estimated savings. Neat Streets very much along the same lines, except it's a focused programme which allows us, it's sponsored by the Wrigley Company Foundation. It allows us to work directly with 25 schools in a more intense, secondary schools in a more intense focus. I'm just getting the nod here to say I'm over time. I've been given 5 minutes less than everybody else. So I'll click on through to the end. But again, Neat Street's very much along the same philosophy as Green Schools, identifying the issues within the schools. We'd run particular conferences for secondary schools. But the purpose, I suppose, and the point of informing you about a lot of this is maybe look out for those schools in your areas and contact them about maybe getting involved in it, because engaging the wider community is a huge part of that. Again, there is that requirement for secondary schools to monitor, evaluate and report on their results as well. You need to strike a balance, I suppose, between being flexible for schools and a certain degree of kind of mandatory reporting as well, which allows us to kind of report those results to our sponsors. You can see, for example, the success of Neat Streets programme in terms of the grading status of sites they've looked at, you know, going from, you know, 13 litter-free sites at the beginning of it to 60 at the end of it. And then, for example, just to tie it all in terms of linking with the marine agenda, I mean, these are some of the direct actions of Neat Streets and Green Schools, and you can see them there for yourselves. I won't go into them, but these are some of the things we'd hope to develop in partnership with the coastal programmes as well as we move forward. The schools, obviously, we're conscious as well. They're inundated with people wanting to work with them. But we think this is important, and you know, I think you'll agree with us. Okay, so thank you for your time. I'll pass you over to the next speaker. Thank you.